first?
I'm doing well, thanks, Eric. Thanks for inviting me down. Kind of looking forward to this.
Yeah. So 2020 marked the 40th anniversary of Ripcordz as a band. It
Yep.
means that you play maybe in the oldest punk band in Quebec, if I'm not wrong.
I think so, as far as I know. It's hardly find somebody who's older than I am. So
Yeah. You used your Facebook page to share a lot of archives and stuff like that for the whole year in 2020.
Yep.
How was it to celebrate this historic anniversary during a worldwide pandemic?
It's not our fault. We didn't do it. Well, it's kind of fun. You know what? If the pandemic hadn't been here, I wouldn't have had all that time to look through all our old crap and go through it. And it was kind of even fun going through all the old drawers and pulling stuff up and going, wow, I got that poster. I didn't realize I had that poster. So it was kind of a lot of fun doing it all. And like I say, we wouldn't have had the time without it. We had to, when the pandemic hit, we had to cancel 50 shows, which wasn't fun, but it gave me a lot of time to do other stuff. And so, living in the past is something we say we never do. We don't want to be the band that only plays stuff from their first album. And for a long time, we'd travel out west every year and do tours, and we had no label behind us. We were kind of just us in a van. So every year people would discover us and they'd think we were a new band because they'd never heard of us before. And that kind of worked for about the first 10 or 15 years that we did it. And so we were always playing new songs. And people said, play your hit. And I'd go, you mean Elvis Death Cult? And they go, what the hell is an Elvis Death Cult? No, I mean, the song from the last album. So we kept being new, and we kind of still like being new.
Yeah. During also the pandemic, you launched the album Don't Buy This First Album. Don't buy the first album, Jerkwad, get this one, which makes a little bit sense with what you just said. How did you manage to work it out during the pandemic, this launch and this release of the new album?
Well, I mean, it was probably the worst plan in the universe because, it takes a long time to get vinyl done. So we planned this for a long time, and we were getting it takes months and months. So we didn't even know there was a pandemic when we were planning all of this, and why we had so many shows that we had to cancel because we were going to be launching the album at Trackside in Montreal, and then going from there and doing a Western tour. And so how did we do it? Well, we were actually surprised that the first wave of the pandemic hit, and they were still working on their album. I kind of found them up thinking they would say, well, whenever the pandemic is over, you'll get your albums. And we were like, oh no, we're still working on it. It'll still be there on deadline. And I'm like, oh, okay. And then the second thing was, we were planning on doing a crap load of shows, and you sell 10, 20 albums every show. So I was planning on not having my living room full of Ripcordz albums, but my living room is full of Ripcordz albums. So on the other hand, we never really have pushed mail order or anything like that. And for some reason, I just put up a notice saying, hey, it's out there, and we sold 200 through mail order. So
that's pretty good.
At least we got rid of some of those things. Now, now I'm using them as coasters and like tables of, boxes of albums and stuff. But we seem to be getting rid of those suckers.
And is a release party, show, tour still on the books for this album, or?
Yeah, well, it will be. When I got the tour shirt made up, it looks really cool. She says wearing his own tour t-shirt. They're free. Well, for me. So yeah, we got the tour t-shirt, and what I'm going to do is when it starts up, we're going to replace the 2020 with 2021 or 2022, or if it's 2026, we will do a tour. We like playing shows. We like going out west. We like, we go out, you eat at restaurants, you kind of hang out at a party every night. You're going to like the music. So it's kind of like, it's fun. It's a party in your honor every night. Like, yeah, for sure, we're going to do it when the apocalypse is over.
During the last 40 years, you toured a lot across Canada, as we spoke a bit about. Except for Montreal, obviously, are there any other spots in the country where you feel like home, and why?
Well, the way we tour, it's always been in a crappy van, and we kept on doing it year after year. So we kind of know the whole country.
Yeah.
Like the bad parts of the country, which is the best part. And so it's like, I mean, I feel comfortable pretty much anywhere. Like Thunder Bay is a fun place to hang out for. You're hanging out for a night. You know the places to go. It's fun hanging out in Thunder Bay. It's the Sault Ste. Marie is like a place we always go back to, and we know where the restaurant with the crazy meat special is, despite the fact that we have vegans in the band. And we go to the same restaurant every time, and we say hi, and we always tip like 40% because we know we're going to be back next year, and they will remember us because we're those weird-looking guys who tipped 40% on a bill. So it's like, hey, how's it going? Yeah. Brandon is like we used to hang out in Brandon all the time. And Invermere, we loved Invermere because they had 2 traffic lights and a bar on the beach. So we just like hang out on the beach, in Invermere, in the interior of BC, and Victoria, and where they got so many friends in Victoria. So mostly it was kind of the smaller towns. I like the big cities too. Like nothing, there's nothing bad about Vancouver. But when you can like hang out in tiny towns or even smallish towns. In Kelowna, again, there's like a really cool beach to hang out right downtown and pose with really stupid statues and stuff like that. We're good there. So I feel comfortable anywhere in Canada. I feel that somebody could kidnap me, put me in an airplane, drop me out of an airplane, and wherever I landed, as long as it wasn't just in the middle of a field somewhere, if I was anywhere close to an urban area or a road, I would know where I was and I would find my way. And so that's kind of the way I feel about Canada.
Yeah. And what has changed in the punk scene during the last 40 years and what has not changed?
What has changed? Well, the one thing I notice all the time is scenes go in circles. They get better, they get worse, things change. I think the biggest change overall this year is the fracturing of the scene into so many, I only like grindcore, I only like pop punk, I only like I kind of like it all. As long as you're not like listening to mainstream crap, like to me it's like, okay, that's good. Maybe I won't listen to that band, but I will admire that band for their talent and for their, that they're going out on the road to show
their dedication.
Like you can admire people even if it's not your cup of tea when it comes to listening to stuff. So, I mean, to me, that's the biggest thing. And the other thing I've noticed is people always look back to previous years and kind of say, those were the glory years because the Misfits released an album, or it was when DOA put out their best album, or there was this really cool club. And I always tell people, look, you're always looking back to the golden age but if you look at Montreal when the scene first started up, there was like a show every couple of weeks, big band, multi-band shows happen once a month if you're lucky. Now there's like all sorts of places to play, and there's Fatal, trackside at Fatal where we play all the time, and it's like we never had like a venue like that before. Well, maybe Cargo at the beginning, but even then it was more of a regular venue, and Licks came and went, and so that was good for a while. But now we have like so many places you can play if you're a band, and so many bands, and so many ways to hear about bands. Loft shows and basement shows, and to me, in 10 or 15 years, people will look back to, well, probably not this year, but last year or next year, and they'll go, that was the golden age of the scene. There's so many bands out there releasing so much stuff, and the quality of the stuff they're putting out is so good, and people are touring, and there's so much stuff happening. So it's for the people who are like looking back and saying, hey, well, there was a golden age, and now I wish I lived back then. And say, no, in 15 years or something, your kids or these young snotty punks will be looking back at what you were doing today and say, that's the golden age. So just enjoy the golden age. Just live it. Listen to the music, enjoy
it. Even if Ripcordz has a lot of fans, you still play a lot of benefits and other DIY shows without asking to get paid or whatever.
We like beer, though.
Yeah.
Just saying.
At the opposite of other mainstream bands that would have the same background of a lot of years touring and everything, you don't do that. Ripcordz seems to have always kept the true punk spirit. How is your relationship with music and its industry?
Well, I guess fortunately we don't have a relationship with the industry. Look, we kind of started out really slow and built up stuff on our own. Like I was, we made our own label, we made our own magazine, and we were our own support system, and we started helping other bands rather than them helping us. So it was kind of, we've just always had the attitude that it should be fun. And even now, we still have that attitude. We want it to be fun. We still, when we do shows that are paying shows, we still charge the same we did 25 years ago. Mm-hmm. What we've done is we need a crappy hotel room. And usually we say crappy hotel room, because you don't care. I need to get some sleep.
Yeah.
We can't have like a party going over our heads, literally, as we're lying on like somebody's couch or somebody's rug in their living room. So that's the one thing we've added in 25 years is we need a place to sleep that we kind of control. Mm-hmm. And other than that, it's like it stays the same. Whenever we went out on tour, it was always like, okay, we'll break even on the tour, and think of it as a vacation. Like no matter what we do, we're going to have fun. We're going to go out and walk around town and meet punks and hand out flyers and just wander around town and just pretend almost like we're punk tourists and just enjoy it. And then we were the only band that I think that the clubs are always amazed because we would wake up in the morning after a show, say in Thunder Bay, and we're playing Winnipeg the next night. And we'd wake up at 7:00 in the morning and we'd drive like 7 hours to Winnipeg, and we'd be there in the early afternoon. And we'd be like, okay, now let's find a pub. Let's have some lunch. Let's go out and see where all the cool places are, and do some record shopping, mm-hmm. And just meet people around. And then we'd be like knocking on the door at the club, and they go, "What do you mean you're the band? Like the sound man only gets here in like 3 hours. Like, go away!" So, but it's just we're in town. We want to experience it. We don't want to like get there just in time for sound check, sleep in the next morning, and then just so you go in van, sound check, play, van, sound check, play.
And you don't see CDs at all. And,
we want to experience the city, which is why I say I could, go anywhere in Canada. Mm-hmm. That's what we did. It's like we would drive 6 hours in the morning, and then we'd be there in the early afternoon. So,
you must have seen and lived all kinds of situations during your different tours. What are the most incredible things you have seen while touring?
There's so many different categories on that. You know what? It's just every time we went out, there's something new. Usually, it would be the bass player would do something really ridiculous, and we'd have to find him in the morning, and then so that was like we had our own adventures of our own making. But a lot of times it's just like the first time you hit the prairies, then it's like, holy crap! I understand what they talk about. The sky that goes on forever. It's sort of like it feels like it's wrapping around the van. It's like I love driving through the prairies. Everyone says it's so boring. I love driving through the prairies. It's just fun. Now, probably if I lived there, I wouldn't love driving through the prairies. But it's getting to me. It's the funnest parts and the funnest places to play have always been the punk houses, and it's like going to punk houses. Mm-hmm. And what we do on tours is we book like 3 or 4 big shows where they would pay us real money, and then we kind of go, okay, that kind of covers our expenses for the tour. So now we can start booking smaller towns in Vermeer, so we can drink by the river.
The beach.
But also we can book into punk houses and play in a basement in Vernon, or play in Vermeer in this community center that's this big, and play on the railroad tracks in Salmo, BC, or it's just like the craziest, smallest places, and it's packed and it's fun, and it's sort of like it's something we couldn't do if we were doing it every night, mm-hmm. because it's just like you don't really make money. And unfortunately, it's a capitalist world we live in, and we kind of need that to keep on going. We need to eat occasionally, but those were the funnest places. And I was actually kind of thinking if things work out, and depending on timing and my jobs and everything, that maybe we could do like an all punk house tour for the new album when it actually gets around to it.
That would be sick. That would be sick. You just launched a new Facebook group called Punk Canada, which seems to get a lot of traffic. Why are those virtual forums or magazines or stuff like that so important in the punk scene?
Yeah, that one was weird. I didn't expect it to sort of blow up the way it did. I just got this thing I've always had that I hate it when people talk about the Canadian punk scene and the only things they ever talk about are like the Demics and the Vile Tones and the Subhumans and basically Vancouver and Toronto and bands that have been around for 40 years or that were around 40 years ago. So I like all those bands and I like those scenes, but it's like, okay, talk about something else. So I just got pissed off at a whole bunch of the web pages that were out there, and it was, oh yeah, it's a Canadian punk web page, and all they ever talk about is Toronto and Vancouver. So it's like I started up another one that was just not to say don't. There's a lot of Toronto and Vancouver members in there, which is cool, but there's also a lot of people from Montreal and Jonquière and Calgary and Edmonton, like some great scenes in the Maritimes even. And so there's all these bands. And I think maybe that's kind of people were looking for that too. So like this is stuff about bands, and I'm learning so much about bands on it. Like I figured, I started it like a month and a half ago, and I was expecting at this point in time to maybe have like 500 or 600 members, and it's like 7,500. It's like just getting really big, and now everybody's mad at me because I tell them, no, it's got to be about music, and say, we don't want to have your rules. And I say, well, fuck off then. It's like if you don't like the page, go somewhere else. It's a big internet. There's other pages out there. It's like I'm not ruling the internet. I have this one little page that has a reason to be there, and the reason is that you can discover other Canadian bands. And if you want to talk about other stuff, the internet's a pretty big place. I'm pretty sure you could do that somewhere else.
Exactly.
Jerks.
During the 80s, you used to run a fanzine called Rear Guard.
Yeah.
Can you tell us a little bit more about this magazine and why did you stop publishing it?
Yeah, because this wasn't really a fanzine. It was. It started out as a program guide for CRSG Radio, which is a station at Concordia, which I managed.
Okay.
So I was a manager there, and we were kind of like, you could say we were very punk rock. And then we kind of, so then we started having these, we'll do a little program guide. And then the little program guide turned into like a kind of a magazine. And then it was like, hey, it's cheaper to print a tabloid newspaper than it is to put out a magazine. I go, really? So then it started, so it was Rearguard, which was like, 32, 36 pages a month, tabloid. We would print, anybody could write for it. So there was like 125 people who were writing for it. And it was like, you could write about anything that's not mainstream. So we did everything from just local bands to Metallica. I got to interview the Ramones, which is cool. You get to interview your heroes. The Metallica one was great because it's like some 16-year-old kid who phoned up. Nobody else wanted to do Metallica, so he said, "Can I do Metallica?" And I said, "Sure." And then the club phones up and said, "You can't send this. It's Metropolis." So like, you can't send a 16-year-old. I go, well, look, just let him do the interview. And then it's like we couldn't find him afterwards, and he was like, oh, yeah, well, I didn't tell my mom I was going to do the interview. So he was like, so that she won't let me out of the house. And I go, look, we need the interview. Send it to Metallica. You got to do it. So he was like, okay, I'll figure out a way. And so he said, okay, well, meet me in Cabot Square, Atwater and St. Catherine. I go, okay. Evidently he lived like a couple of blocks away from there. And he was like, so what he'd done is he'd done the interview. And so he put it on his headphones, and he'd like gone to the bathroom and he'd written out the interview on the toilet paper. What? And he was like, and then he'd so he got this big wad of toilet paper and he jumped out the window and came down to Cabot Square. And so I meet him in the Cabot Square, and I didn't think he was even going to turn up. And then he turns up and he hands me this giant wad of toilet paper and said, "Here's the interview." And I go, okay, that's our Metallica interview. And actually, it turned out pretty good. It was a good interview in the end. But it was like, that was a lot of fun to do. But it was, why did we stop doing it? Because we were crappy at selling ads. Mm-hmm. A full page was $400, and we were making 25,000 copies and distributing it across from Southern Ontario out to St. John, Newfoundland. So yeah, it was huge. It was massive. We get things to, we get notes and stuff from people saying, rear guard subscription department or rear guard this, and I go, subscription department. It's me and my girlfriend, in our living room with just like sheets of paper everywhere and photos. And back then it was typesetting, so you get like long strips of type that you'd have to paste onto pages, and it's just like, and so we had all this crap everywhere, and it's just like, there is no subscription department. It's me. If I can not lose your letter, we'll see what we can do. So yeah, it got so big. It got too big for its own thing. But at the end, we were like doing a dozen interviews with bands from like you say, Metallica, Fugazi, but local bands as well. And we would always choose who got on the cover was the best photo. So on there were times where we had like these huge bands that were million selling. We had like Susie, Susie and the Banshees. I think on that issue, the Asexuals were on the cover because we had better photos of the Asexuals. So it's like it was totally even, and for all the local bands, were treated exactly like huge bands as well. So it's just like, so everybody hopefully looked good and looked big because a band is a band. And then at the end, it was just like, okay, too much stuff. I just head is exploding, losing so much money on this thing. Every issue we'd lose money. Never mind, we didn't pay anybody, including ourselves. We just lost money just for printing it. So it's just like, all right, that's it. It's just so tired. Yeah. I gave birth, once a month for like 40 months, and that was, okay, done.
Yeah. Are you still involved in magazines or punk rock medias at all today, or?
Not really. What I do is if people ask for advice and stuff, I give them advice. If I seem to talk a lot for the radio, for podcasts, but also like there was this new compilation, the what's it, AEH,
CAB,
ACAB. All colonialists are bastards. And it was this guy actually who just contacted me from the West Coast. He was supposed to be on one of the bands we did our West Coast tour with. He said, sorry, you can't do it. I was going to put out this compilation. He said, well, if you ever decide you want to do it, let me know. And so I said, oh, well, why don't you try and do it? So I just like gave him all the advice. I gave him photos for the cover. I told him how to design it. He used Rene, who's produced all our stuff. Rene from the Brains.
Yeah.
He's the one who mixed the album and or mastered the album, sorry. And so it was, so now it just came out, and I'm like, so when people ask for help, I'll try and help.
Oh, that's cool. Am I wrong, or you were also involved in Enregistré Records, which looks a bit like Rear Guard in the name, so maybe it's related? Can you tell us a little bit more? Related.
Sorry?
Can you tell us a little bit more about this record label?
Yeah, well, it all kind of came from the same sources. That I owned a design shop back in the early 80s, up until the mid 90s, I guess. And so I was doing typesetting and designing magazines and just for laughs stuff I did back then, and McGill University stuff. So I was doing, which meant that I knew how to do this. And this was before computers were there, so nobody could do covers for albums or anything. So I was like, okay, well, and then we had to figure out how to put our second album out. So I figured out how to do that. So I was kind of like, okay, I know how to do this. Nobody else had the knowledge. So I started just putting out albums for our friends, and I figured, well, On Guard is kind of sounds very Canadian, and I'll put a little French for the on.
Yeah.
So that's very Quebec Canadian. And then just sort of put it out, and then I started contacting producers and figuring out like duplication.ca, which is one of the biggest producers of albums. It used to be they just made cassette tapes, and it was like some guy on the second floor in the second floor apartments off Saint Denis. So that's where we did our Right is a Right cassette, and then it was like, so I was like, okay, that's how you do it. And then started doing it for our friends, and then people contacted us, say, hey, you've got a record label. Well, it's not really a record label. We never had a bank account. We put out 50 albums. So it was like, we'd get deals for bands. So if you're a label, you talk to Payette and Sims about record covers, and it's like, okay, is the record cover cost you $2,000? I said, well, yeah, we're a label, and we'll give you so much business. okay, it'll be like $1,100. It's like
Yeah.
half price. So I was like, okay, well, the band will pay you directly. So we'll get them pressing deals. We figure out distribution.
Mhm.
We distribute it through Cargo and a couple of other places. We'd arrange tours. I made a touring list that we published and give to bands for $5 to pay for the photocopying. So basically we'd help. I'd do the album covers. Sometimes I'd do them from scratch, like for a whole bunch of albums. And then like Les Bons Ariens had a photo they wanted to put on, so like I figured out how to do that with the lettering and everything, and put an album cover together for them. And then we do that all for free. And then at some point in time, we realized, hey, we're losing a lot of money on this too, because we're doing it all for free. So we put out this benefit. We started doing that with Rearguard. We put out an album. In fact, that's where the name came from.
Okay.
So Rearguard was happening at the same time. Needed money for Rearguard. So we put out this album compilation called On Guard. And then it was like you need a name for it. So it's from Rearguard it went On Guard, and then it was like then it changed it instead of ONGARDE, which was the name of the compilation, it was On Guard. Other languages.
Yeah.
Anyway, so that's how we invented the name for it, and then we started putting out other people's stuff. So it all kind of was the same stuff. It was all like, we have no money, we need a benefit to do something, and that's how it all started. And then we just did more work for free.
Yeah, exactly. And a lot of stuff in your living room, I guess, with that.
Yeah, the amount of stuff I always thought I was like keeping everything, and now when I was going through stuff, I'm like, wow, there's so much stuff I haven't kept. Like I kept probably like 150 flyers and stuff and posters from shows, which but we played 3,000.
Yeah.
So it's like, okay, there's a lot of flyers out there. So now I'm asking people to send them in. So I found like another 100 that people sent me, which is nice, but there's still like, there's a lot of stuff out there.
Can you tell us a bit with the On Guard Records, what kind of bands you were releasing? What kind of bands did you work with at these times?
Well, pretty much it was kind of like Rearguard. Any band that called us up. So it was like we had friends who was in the band The Stand, who were from Glengarry, Ontario. We called them the only Montreal band that actually lived in Ontario. This is like right across the border, literally the border on the 20. You go when you hit the border for Ontario, the singer's farm was on the border.
Oh yeah,
like literally on the border. So I was like, yeah, okay. Closest city was Montreal, so they're the Montreal band from Ontario. And so like we were hanging out with them, so they were one of the first cassettes we put out. Bare Bones, which is like an acoustic duo, but they were playing a lot of shows in Montreal. We put out their album, and then it sort of started. Failsafe. Actually, we didn't do Failsafe. I managed Failsafe at some, but that's a different story. But then, other people started contacting us. Les Bons Ariens was like one, and we helped them get grants to go touring and stuff. So that was kind of cool. We got some money for them and to record. So when people would phone up, kind of go, oh, we want to. We're just wondering what kind of deal and like how much. And I go, well. Sure, I don't care. Actually, I know your band. I like your band. Sure. Or I've never heard of you guys, but if you're really into it, sure, we'll help you out. And how much will it cost? You go, well, it won't cost you anything. They're like, huh? What? Huh? And then sometimes like a band would say, came along and they went, happened a couple of times. Or I haven't heard from the band for a little while, and when I phone them up and they go, well, what's up? I haven't heard from you guys. And I go, well, we didn't want to talk to you about it because like we got a deal with like a bigger label that's giving us money. And I go, great. That's what we that's why we're helping you put out your stuff so that you can get a deal like that. And we're like, oh, okay, cool.
Outside of Ripcordz, what does the ordinary life of Paul Gott look like?
Busy. Yeah, I kind of got 2.5 full-time jobs. So I work as a professor at Concordia, and I also produce a show for Matt TV, TVA, called City Life, which is a weekly news magazine. So putting together shows there. Do 2 shows a week actually there. I work as a commentator on different places as a political commentator. So sometimes I'm not good in French. I'm not good enough in French. My son makes fun of me all the time for that, which is he should. Stupid that I can't be perfectly bilingual. But I work so CJD and stuff in the morning. Sometimes I'll be there, being very opinionated, which is nice. And then I'm a single dad. So my son's 17 now. So pretty soon I guess going to lose that title. He's starting CJEP this year. He's doing well. He's so kind of very proud of that one. So I make stickers for bands. Been doing that for 40 years. I'm sure there's other stuff I do. I just kind of forget. People usually have to tell me something, and then I go, "Yeah, I do that."
Outside of Ripcordz, do you or did you already have I'm not good in English.
Better than mine.
Did you already have any other musical projects, other bands or whatever?
Not really. I mean, I started Ripcordz when I was 18, so and I've kind of just always been into it. And when we started out, I didn't have a lot of time because I was doing on guard and rear guard and studying, and had to own my own business, so so working a lot. So we didn't do it. I barely had enough time for the Ripcordz, and then once we really started going in the mid '80s, started doing a lot of shows. Then we were playing as many as 100 shows a year. So that was all the time I had, and then when that started to slow down a little bit, the other members of the band would have side projects and played in a lot of bands.
You made a map of all
our family
bands.
tree. Our family tree is insane. Because even sometimes when it was like when Francois was in Ripcordz, sometimes we were his main band, but he would be in Vulgar Deli as well, and drumming for like 2 or 3 other bands, including Amnésie and God knows who else. And same with Danny, who even played for the Undead, and he's played for other bands like that. So it got really complicated. They were doing stuff, but I was kind of I was working, doing a record label. And just and working more.
As a last question, I like to ask people what music they are listening to during these times. Any bands caught your attention recently, and any friends projects you'd like to promote a bit or something?
Well, it's kind of weird because I long ago stopped really going out and buying records. What I do is I trade records with the bands we play with. So normally, we're playing still 25, 30 shows a year. So it's just like, okay, I'll trade an album, then I'll play that. If it's a CD, I'll play it in my car. So I never actually bought a CD player. Or vinyl, I'll play it at home. So that's how I discover bands. So, it's like when we played Fatale a few years ago, and that was the first time I ever heard Riot Porn. And I was like, holy crap, this is like my new favorite Montreal band. We hear a lot La Gâchette, or when we go out west, we toured, was it this tour? No, not that tour. Another tour, we played with Mandible Claw from Calgary, who are probably if I'd listened to them just on its own, I would have kind of gone, well, a little too metal for my taste. But Guy is the singer is the best front man I think I've ever seen on stage. And and we got to play a bunch of shows with him, and it was like, okay, my new favorite band. So that's the way I always discover bands. So my last year, I haven't been discovering a lot. However, we got on several compilations. Now I'm listening to the compilations. And Chips Ahoy, who we were supposed to be playing with out west, You know, I kind of knew about them and I kind of heard a song, and then it's like, okay, now there's another couple of songs that I'm listening to, and it's like, okay, now I'm looking for their stuff. And so that's how I discover bands, and now I'm discovering it through that crazy Facebook page.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'd say, when it comes to like knowing, I don't think I ever heard the Virus because we never played with them. And I know a lot of people like them, and I'm like, yeah, I should probably listen to them. We played with Rancid a bunch of times, so I listened to them back then. So them I know. The Virus I should know, and I just don't. But I do know the Whiskey Shits.
Yeah.
So that's how I discover bands. Is I just listen to stuff, the bands we've played with, and I think you appreciate them more too, simply because you're there and you see the fun that they're having, and you see what they are on stage as well as on a record or on a disc. And when you hear a disc, exactly like with Man of the Claw, like I'm not just listening to the disc, I'm remembering that experience. Yeah. So you get the whole band experience, and that's how I discover stuff.
Would you like to add any last word?
See, that's my problem. Is I have a brain full of mush. Like I tend to work well when I'm answering questions, but I think I just kind of like to repeat that message that okay, if you're a punk, you're living in the golden age. You're living in the golden age. Enjoy it. Like, go out to the shows. There's so many places, so many bands, so much to discover. Like, just go out and enjoy it. And realize that you've got more stuff than anybody ever had in the past. And yeah, people say, oh yeah, but there's this great band. I go, yeah, there was this great band. And there's a whole load of crap behind that that you've forgotten about and you're not going to talk about. And which is completely understandable. And nowadays, there's way more good stuff out there. You just have to look for it.
Mm-hmm. All right. Thank you, Paul. It's really appreciated.
Well, thank you. It's been fun.
Yeah.
And now I kind of remember some stuff.
On the beer grass and level haven't changed. Punching fingers talking to avoid the heat.